Well guys, finally we get to talk about another gaming console, and this time around we get to talk about the Nintendo DSi and see how it holds up in 2020. Now, this thing was released so many eons ago, and it was technically released in 2009, so it's going to be turning actually about like 11 years old now, which is so insane. And I just talked about the Nintendo DS, the original one, and the Nintendo DS Lite. I think I talked about the Game Boy Micro as well, so this is kind of like in succession to all those consoles. I have all the Nintendo consoles, so I'm going to be kind of quickly reviewing them this year. And I've owned this console for about 2 years now. I have the white model, and I actually do like it a lot. And this is one of the original ones. I think they made it like a new DSi XL. I'm not really too sure. I don't think they ever made a new DSi. I could be totally wrong, but obviously with the body you can see it's pretty familiar. But what I will tell you is the whole entire setup of the Nintendo DS lineup, going from a DS Lite to a DSi, honestly changed up so much. And I feel like the DSi is probably one of the most important Nintendo gaming consoles ever made. And I say that because, you know, with the previous consoles like the original DS and the DS Lite and all those Game Boy Advances, there really wasn't too much to do outside of your standard, you know, plug in the game and go. I mean, we had PictoChat, we had different things like that, but with the DSi, you were actually able to go and, you know, even have an eShop. You were able to kind of get software updates, kind of, and you were able to do a lot. You had a web browser, you had cameras, you had so much going for this thing that Nintendo was really trying to make it more than just a gaming console. They were trying to make it like a multimedia device. With the original DS Lite, it just really wasn't. I mean, it was just a gaming console really, and that was pretty much it. And with the DSi, I mean, even if you look at today, like you have the Nintendo Switch and the Switch Lite, which I will be reviewing. I already reviewed the Switch, but those consoles, every time I pick it up, I always see a little bit of like the DSi in that console just because of the way it's set up and the software of it, and that stemmed from the DSi, which is so cool. Now, looking around this whole entire body, I can definitely tell you the DSi still seems and looks like a pretty good console. I always liked the way the DS Lite looked, but it's really not that big of a deal. I think in 2020 nobody really cares about it. One of the biggest things that when people were picking up a DSi that they complain about most of the time was the lack of the Game Boy Advance slot, which if you think about it is kind of a big deal, but they did give us the SD card slot, so that's actually really cool. I actually really like that a lot. Once you were able to kind of hack your DSi, you were able to go and, you know, port games that you own legally into the DSi, which was super cool. So I always liked Nintendo for doing that, and even with the SD card slot, it was already ahead of its time. The Switch still uses it, the Switch Lite still uses it, a super cool thing. And funny enough, I actually picked up this DSi for like $13 about 2 years ago. Everything was working on it. I think I bought it from Japan. I didn't go to Japan and get it, they shipped it here, but if you go to eBay, you go to Japan, so many Japanese sellers are selling Nintendo consoles for so cheap. But for some reason, their Nintendo Switches are still super expensive, but they're like DSi's, their DS's, their Game Boy Advances, like all those consoles are so cheap over there, which is so crazy, and they ship it to you, which is always insane. And I was honestly shocked by how actually decent quality this thing was. I bought my Game Boy Advance SP, I think, from there too, which is pretty crazy. Now, actually opening up the console and flipping it open, we had that dual screen technology. You know, I think everyone has seen a DS Lite at this point, or DS at, you know, for time, so there's no need to talk about it for like 50 minutes. But one thing that surprised me, that still kind of surprises me, is how decent those screens are on the original DSi, the smaller one. You know, with the DSi XL, that console screen is like so pixelated, but with the smaller DSi, it's actually much better. And because those pixels are pushed closer on the DSi, it just makes it look better, even though they're kind of the same panel. And when you're playing games, when you're feeling it in the hand, it still feels like a very decent console. You still have a lot going for it. The buttons are super clicky, which I really, really do like. And after 11 years on this thing, it still feels very premium and very decent. And I think I made a mistake. This thing actually came out in 2008. The DSi XL came out in 2009. That's what I was getting mixed up at. But I think I corrected it in the beginning with. Now, the biggest reason to pick up a DSi in 2020, honestly, like I've said before with the DS and the DS Lite, it's just the gaming library. There's just so many games for this thing. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, you can go pick up any game. You can even go to GameStop still and pick up DSi. It's DS Lite cartridges, but you can pick up so many games for this thing. It's wild. And if this thing had a Game Boy Advance slot, that would have been way better. That would have expanded your game selection. But even then, the DSi still has a pretty big selection in and of its core, and you can easily go, like I stated, pick up any, pick any 2 letters, and there's definitely a game for those things. So if you modify your DSi, then it just kind of expands your use case even more. But even if you don't, it's still a very good console, and there's still tons of games for this thing. Even in 2020, they're not making any more games for this thing, but it's just something about holding a console in your hands rather than just, playing a game on your phone. That just kind of gives me a whole different experience, you know what I mean? So, and I always talk about like DS Lite emulators for phones and stuff, but there's nothing like actually playing the console. That just kind of changes everything. So the really cool thing about the DSi is that it does have really great battery life. So I usually turn off Wi-Fi and I set the brightness a little lower, and this thing has lasted me several days. I don't even remember the last time I charged this thing, and this thing's battery still has not drained, so I like that a lot. It's super dope. Now honestly, to kind of sum up the video, I mean, is the Nintendo DSi still worth it in 2020? I'm gonna say 100% yes. I mean, there's really no reason not to pick this thing up. Obviously, even if you want to use it as your main gaming console, it has so much going for it, and if you get one in pretty decent condition, it can definitely last you for a while. It's such a cheap price now that you could literally get this thing and just like, whether you use it or not, it's not going to cost you a lot of money. Like I said, 2 years ago, I bought mine for $13. You can probably pick yours up for maybe even 10 or whatever, how much the depreciation went down since then. But that's honestly one of the coolest things ever. And I definitely would recommend like a DSi over a DS Lite or original DS. But as a collector's item, the original DS or DS Lite are probably more valuable in this day and age, I guess, even though none of them are really appreciating it all. I like the DSi, I like what it brought, and I think going into 2020 and these whole 2020s years, I think it'd be really cool to see how many portable gaming consoles Nintendo pushes out, because at this time, I mean, Nintendo is just pushing out consoles like crazy, and since the Switch, we've only really seen the Switch Lite, so I'm curious to see what the future Nintendo holds, but I'm still really happy with the past Nintendo consoles for sure. So that pretty much covers it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also, check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel. All those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate if you guys could check it out. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.